There comes a moment in your life where breakthrough meets betrayal. A point when your healing threatens the very foundation of the person who once fed off your weakness. And it's in this moment, not the beginning, but the moment of your rising, that the narcissist plays their last dirtiest game. This message is not just information, it's a revelation. It's not just education, but activation. Today, I want to help you discern not just the narcissist's tactics, but your unstoppable power in the midst of them. When you become emotionally and mentally self-sufficient, something deep inside the narcissist begins to panic. Not because you become someone else, but because you've returned to who you were always meant to be. This is the part they feared the most. Not the arguments, not the disagreements, not even the threats of leaving. What they feared was your wholeness, your clarity, your unshakable identity. When you rise into your power, when your voice stops trembling, when you no longer seek their validation, you expose the illusion they worked so hard to maintain. Because as long as you needed them, they had leverage. As long as your sense of self was tied to their approval, they had access. But the moment that tie breaks and you no longer revolve around their emotional gravity, they begin to feel irrelevant. And that's the most dangerous emotional state for a narcissist. Irrelevance to a narcissist isn't just an inconvenience, it's psychological death. It's the realization that their influence has expired. You are no longer their emotional puppet. You are no longer pulled in by guilt, shame, fear, or false hope. And this isn't just freedom for you. It's exposure for them. Because now, without your energy feeding their ego, they begin to feel the hollowness of who they truly are. They start to sense the void that was once covered up by your constant reactions, your emotional labor, your attempts to fix what was never yours to fix. That void begins to echo louder than ever before. And in that void, they're forced to face something they've never truly developed: identity without domination, worth without worship, power without a pawn. Your independence isn't just an act of self-love. It's a mirror held up to the narcissist's internal lack. And that's what they fear. They don't fear your success nearly as much as they fear your peace. Because success can still be spun, still be challenged, still be questioned. But peace? Peace means you're unreachable. Peace means you've made it to a level where they no longer matter. And when a narcissist no longer matters to you, they feel they no longer exist. This is why they react so violently, emotionally, verbally, sometimes even socially, when you begin to grow beyond their grip. You've broken the emotional contract they never verbalized, but always expected you to uphold. That unspoken agreement where you were supposed to stay small so they could feel big, where your confusion made them feel intelligent, where your loyalty, no matter how abused, fed their sense of superiority. But now you've rewritten that contract, torn it up, and walked away. And with every step you take toward healing, they are forced to sit with the nightmare of their own insignificance. So they panic, but not like someone who has lost a loved one. They panic like someone who has lost a tool. Because to a narcissist, you were never seen in your full humanity. You were an instrument to validate their worth, to carry their wounds, to prop up their fragile sense of self. And when that tool no longer functions the way they desire, when it begins to repair itself, set boundaries, and discover purpose, it becomes useless to the narcissist's agenda. And that's when they launch their last, dirtiest game. Not to win you back, but to convince the world, and maybe even you, that you're unstable, ungrateful, and unworthy without them. But the truth is, your independence reveals their dependency. They were always the one depending on you, not the other way around. They depended on your silence, your forgiveness, your hesitation, your hope. You gave them a platform they never earned. But the moment you become unstoppable, the stage collapses. And now they're left scrambling for an audience that will still listen, still pity them, still applaud their victim story. But you've graduated. You've outgrown their theater. You've learned that your worth is not tied to their applause or their attacks. This is why they try to pull you back. They'll use anything, praise or punishment, kindness or cruelty, silence or drama, to pull you back into a role you've already outlived. Because once you're mentally free, they lose not just access, but significance. And a narcissist without significance is like a king without a crown, angry, entitled, and dangerous. But that's not your burden to carry. Your job is not to manage their feelings, cushion their fall, or explain your transformation. Your job is to keep becoming, to keep rising, to keep walking forward even when the old shadows scream for your attention. Because the very fact that you no longer need their validation is the proof that you've healed beyond their reach. You are no longer their mirror. You are your own light now. And that light, that's what makes you truly unstoppable. When a narcissist realizes they no longer have control over you, they don't just walk away. They don't simply accept defeat and move on. No, because their identity is rooted in dominance, their self-worth tied to whether or not they can shape how others see you. And so, when you become emotionally untouchable and mentally unshakable, they resort to a darker, subtler strategy: reputation sabotage. This isn't just gossip. This is a calculated character assassination. It is surgical slander with a specific objective: to erode your credibility before you even arrive in new rooms. Because if they can't manipulate your present or your future, they'll try to redefine your past and stain your name. They spread misinformation, half-truths, and twisted interpretations of events that once happened between you, but they won't say it to your face. No. The goal is not confrontation, it's contamination. They move in whispers, in back channels, in private conversations with people who don't know the whole story. And the poison they pour is strategic. It's designed to cause the people around you to question what they see in you now, to make them doubt your integrity, your intentions, your transformation. They know they can't discredit your growth directly because your healing is undeniable. So instead, they go after the image of you that's forming in the minds of others. They'll say you're fake, that your strength is a cover-up, that your boundaries are bitterness, that your confidence is arrogance, that your freedom is rebellion. But every word they say is an echo of their own insecurity. They are not attacking you. They're attacking the fact that you don't need them anymore. And that's what they cannot tolerate. Here's what makes this tactic even more dangerous. It's often subtle. It can come through jokes, sarcasm, passive-aggressive comments, or concern masked as care. I just hope they're okay. You know, they've been through a lot. I wouldn't say anything, but they build narratives where they are the victim and you are the villain. They revise history to protect their ego, casting themselves as the one who was misunderstood, mistreated, or abandoned, while erasing the part they played in your pain. And the people listening, they don't always know the truth. They weren't there for the tears you cried in silence, the manipulation you endured behind closed doors, or the emotional chaos that almost cost you your mind. So some will believe the narcissist's version. Some will side with them, and that's painful. Because you want to defend yourself. You want to shout your truth from the rooftops. You want to correct the lies and clear your name. But here is the wisdom. When your character is being weaponized by someone you once trusted, the battle is not yours, it's God's. It's not fought in the court of public opinion, it's proven in the courtroom of your life. Your reputation is not just what people say about you. It's the fruit of your consistency, your peace, your integrity. And those who are truly discerning will not be deceived for long. You see, while they're planting lies, you're planting legacy. While they're creating drama, you're building destiny. And time always reveals the truth. In the beginning, their voice may be louder, but in the end, your life will speak louder than anything they ever said. What you continue to do, how you continue to rise, how you carry yourself with grace, that will be your vindication. Their goal is to trigger you into reacting, because a reaction can be twisted, manipulated, turned into proof of everything they've been saying. But when you respond with silence and success, when you keep growing despite their attempts to diminish you, you're not just surviving, you're silencing the lie. And here's the beauty in all of this. The very people who were lied to, they'll start to see it. They'll begin to notice the gap between who you are and what they were told. The truth has a frequency, and eventually, even the blind can feel when something isn't right. You don't have to fight to be seen. You just have to walk in truth long enough for their narrative to fall apart. So don't get distracted. Don't waste energy trying to fix what you didn't break. Don't lower yourself to respond to every attack. Keep building. Keep healing. Keep showing up in the fullness of who you've become. Because the louder they scream to define your identity, the more obvious it becomes that they've lost control of it. Their last dirty game might damage some perceptions, but it will never damage your purpose. They can touch your name, but not your nature. They can lie about your past, but not stop your future. They can try to bury your image, but they cannot bury your calling. Keep walking forward. Let your peace be your protest. Let your presence speak what your words don't have to. Because when a narcissist plays the game of reputation sabotage, it's a sure sign they've already lost the only thing that ever mattered to them, your submission. When the narcissist can no longer control the narrative of your life, they begin playing the most manipulative role they've ever attempted, the role of the victim. This is the most deceptive game of all because it inverts reality. It takes your strength, your healing, and your decision to move on and rebrands it as cruelty. It paints your boundaries as betrayal and your silence as abuse. This tactic isn't designed to bring reconciliation or even clarity. It is purely a strategy of sabotage. It's designed to control how others see you after you've broken free. When you walk away empowered, they walk into circles of mutual friends, family, or acquaintances and begin constructing a version of the story where they are the wounded one. And the terrifying part is it's believable. Why? Because narcissists are masters of image. They know how to cry on cue. They know how to recount a twisted version of events that sounds not only credible but even noble. They place themselves in the role of the misunderstood partner, the loving friend, the one who gave everything and got nothing in return. They highlight your moments of anger, your reactions, your flaws, but not the abuse, the gaslighting, the control that provoked them. This victim game is meant to gain something very specific: sympathy. Sympathy, when given without discernment, becomes a weapon. And in the hands of a narcissist, it becomes a form of social currency. With it, they can bankrupt your character in the minds of others. They use sympathy to isolate you, to create doubts about you, and to poison your future connections before you even have a chance to build them. They do it by being emotionally persuasive, not factually honest. They don't say, "I was toxic." They say, "I did everything I could," and they just walked away. They don't mention how they drained you. They emphasize how confused and heartbroken they are about your change. And tragically, some people buy it. Some people who were never close enough to see the abuse, who only saw the public mask, begin to look at you with suspicion. They begin to question your version of the story because the narcissist got there first. This is why the final game is so dangerous, because it isn't aimed at you directly. It's aimed at the people around you. It's a second-hand assault. And here's where many people go wrong. They get drawn back in, not by love, but by the pressure to defend themselves, to prove their innocence, to tell their side. But when you try to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you only waste energy. And worse, you hand the narcissist exactly what they want: re-engagement. They want your attention. They want you pulled back into the drama, the conflict, the endless need to explain yourself. Because when you do that, you look unstable. You look bitter. You look like you're hiding something. And that's exactly what they want to portray. You must understand this deeply. The narcissist's victim role is not about reconciliation, and it's not about healing. It's about maintaining a position of control through perception. They care less about what actually happened and more about what others believe happened. Because for the narcissist, power isn't truth, it's narrative, it's image. And when their real face is exposed, they panic. They go into overdrive. They exaggerate, lie, twist, and manipulate every interaction they can use as evidence that you were the problem all along. They might even cry in front of others, tears not of repentance, but of reputation management. But here's the part that many people miss. This final game means you've already won. Because this game only happens when you've stopped playing theirs. You're no longer feeding their ego. You're no longer reacting to their provocation. And without your emotional fuel, they begin to burn out. So they switch tactics. They start campaigning for sympathy from people who were never even a part of your story. They weaponize your peace, your quiet, your absence. And yet, all of that proves how much power you truly hold. Because if you were irrelevant, they wouldn't need to say a thing. So, what do you do in the face of this twisted performance? You rise above it. You let your life speak louder than their lies. You walk in such consistent integrity that no lie can stick to you for long. You remain calm, not because you don't hurt, but because you've matured beyond manipulation. You let time reveal what emotion tries to hide, because the truth always outlasts the performance. And people who genuinely know you, who walk closely with you, will see through the mask. Let them act. Let them talk. Let them perform their monologue of victimhood. But don't step on their stage. You've already left that theater. And your silence, your progress, your peace, they are the loudest testimony of all. When a narcissist realizes they've lost their grip on you, when your confidence rises, your boundaries become unshakable, and your presence no longer bends to their pressure, they activate one of their most destructive tactics: the smear campaign. This isn't just a petty attempt to ruin your name. It is a calculated assault aimed at the one thing they can still attempt to control: how others perceive you. Because if they can't break you privately anymore, they will try to shatter you publicly. They begin to rewrite the narrative of the relationship. Suddenly, they become the victim in a story you lived through. They'll twist your actions, exaggerate your flaws, omit their abuse, and build a new version of events where you're the villain. They'll accuse you of being cold, manipulative, unstable, disloyal, using every label they themselves embodied, but projecting it onto you. It's not just projection, it's protection. It's how they protect their fragile ego from the truth, that you outgrew them. The smear campaign is not just about lies, it's about isolation. Narcissists know that the real danger isn't just that you're free, but that others might see your strength and be inspired. So they recruit people, friends, family members, even colleagues, by telling a story filled with half-truths and weaponized vulnerability. They use charm and persuasion to position themselves as the misunderstood soul, while casting you as the unpredictable storm. And for those who don't know the full truth, who haven't seen what happened behind closed doors, the narcissist's performance can be compelling. But make no mistake, this is not about you as a person. It's about their loss of power. Their identity was intertwined with their ability to dominate you, to provoke you, to make you question your worth. Now that they can no longer access that influence, they try to regain it through proxy. They manipulate others to carry out what they no longer can do directly. The smear campaign becomes their remote control. And even from a distance, they try to press your buttons through the opinions of others. You may begin to hear strange things. People you once trusted may act differently. They may withdraw. They may question your story. You'll feel the echo of the narcissist's words in rooms they never walked into. This is where many survivors feel the sting, not just of betrayal, but of injustice. You fought to survive, to heal, to find clarity, and now you're being accused by someone who never took accountability for a single wound they caused. And yet, this is the critical moment where your true power emerges. Because responding to a smear campaign with truth alone won't always work, especially with those who have already chosen to believe a lie. Your response must not just be verbal, it must be visible. Live your truth so loudly that no lie can survive in its presence. Your peace becomes your testimony. Your progress becomes your witness. Your endurance becomes the evidence that what they're saying doesn't match the fruit of your life. You will be tempted to fight back, to confront every rumor, to defend yourself against every false narrative. But remember, the narcissist doesn't just want to ruin your image. They want to get a reaction. Because even a negative response still gives them power. What breaks their game is your refusal to play. What ends the smear campaign is not your anger. It's your silence, your stability, and your unstoppable forward motion. This tactic, this last dirty game, is their attempt to hold on to relevance in your story. But they are not the author of your next chapter. They are a character from a past season, trying to rewrite a script they were never meant to direct. Let them talk. Let them spin their web. The truth may take time, but it always stands. And the people meant for you, those who carry wisdom and discernment, will eventually see through the smoke. The smear campaign is temporary. Your healing is eternal. Their manipulation is shallow. Your growth is rooted. And no matter how elaborate the lies become, no one can cancel the call on your life. No one can undo the work you've done in private just because they're loud in public. Stay grounded. Keep building. Be unbothered. Because their voice may be echoing now, but the future belongs to those who walk in truth, not those who hide behind lies. And when the noise fades and people begin to see with clarity, the very ones who once doubted you may return, seeking to understand what they overlooked. You won't need to gloat. You won't need to say, "I told you so." Your presence will be enough. Because you didn't stop to throw stones, you stayed focused on building your house. That's what makes you unstoppable. When you begin to rise, when you begin to heal, when you step into your power and detach emotionally from a narcissist, something profound happens. Not just inside of you, but inside of them. You've unknowingly triggered the one thing they've spent their entire manipulative strategy trying to avoid: powerlessness. But what they do next isn't loud, it's strategic, it's subtle, it's psychological, and it's designed to draw you back into the chaos you worked so hard to escape. That is when they try to trigger emotional regression. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll fall for it again. This is not a casual tactic, it is warfare on your evolution. Emotional regression is the narcissist's attempt to reinstall their program in your mind. They do it not by force, but by temptation. By stirring your emotions in just the right way that it reactivates the version of you they once controlled. It's never random. It's calculated. They know your buttons because they installed them. They know your triggers because they created the patterns. So here's what it looks like. After you've emotionally detached and started living in peace, they don't come knocking with kindness. They come armed with manipulation disguised as vulnerability. They might say something small but cutting, just enough to reopen a wound you thought had closed. A phrase like, "You were never really there for me," or "I guess I never meant as much to you as I thought." And suddenly your mind races. Your heart starts explaining. Your spirit feels disturbed. Why? Because they've dragged you back into the identity you carried when you were with them, an identity rooted in over-explaining, over-giving, over-apologizing. That's regression. But the most dangerous part is not the statement they make, it's the inner dialogue they awaken. Suddenly, you're questioning yourself. Was I too harsh? Did I give up too soon? Could I have handled things differently? And that internal self-doubt is what they were after all along. They didn't need to convince you to come back. They just needed to convince you to feel like the old version of yourself again. Because once you feel like who you used to be, they know it's only a matter of time before you act like it. And here's where it gets even deeper. The narcissist doesn't just want access to your emotions. They want to own your reactions. They know that if they can provoke you, they can discredit you. If they can make you lash out, they can point to others and say, "See, they're unstable." It becomes a setup. They poke until you explode, then play innocent while you're left holding the blame. That's how they keep you locked in the story that they are the victim and you're the problem. So understand, emotional regression is not you being weak. It's the evidence that they know exactly where your strength lies and they want to pull you out of it. They don't want to win you back to love you. They want to win you back to break you, because your emotional detachment means you're no longer their mirror. And narcissists need mirrors to feel real. Without you reacting, without you crying, yelling, defending, or fixing, they're left alone with themselves. And that is a place they cannot survive. You have to be vigilant. You have to know that the old version of you was not stupid. It was uninformed. But now you know better. You know that the peace you feel isn't something you owe an apology for. The boundaries you've set aren't cruelty, they are clarity. And the silence you now walk in is not the absence of love, it's the presence of self-worth. The game they play in this stage is not meant to defeat your logic. It's aimed at your memory. They want you to remember the emotional entanglement. They want you to recall the times you were needed, the moments you were special, the emotional highs that followed the abuse. It's like emotional bait, hooking you with nostalgia, only to drag you back into a sea of instability. So how do you win? You win by not participating. You win by recognizing the bait and refusing to bite. You win by staying still when you would have chased, by being calm when you would have cried, by staying grounded when you would have spiraled. You don't need to prove your growth by debating them. You prove it by being unbothered. That's your strength now, your stillness. Your refusal to react. Because nothing terrifies a narcissist more than someone they can no longer move. Every time you don't react, you break another chain. Every time you stay in your peace, you reclaim another piece of yourself. And eventually, they'll stop trying. Not because they've changed, but because they'll realize you have. Emotional regression only works on who you used to be, but you're not them anymore. You've evolved. You've risen, you've detached, not because you stopped feeling, but because you finally started healing. When the narcissist realizes you are no longer under their control, they go digging, not for truth, not for healing, but for ammunition. One of their most deceptive and manipulative tactics is to resurrect the past. They reach back into moments that you have healed from, mistakes you've outgrown, or secrets you once entrusted to them, and they weaponize them to destabilize your present strength. This is not accidental, it is intentional. Because when someone cannot access the version of you that once catered to their ego, they search for a version of you they can still use against you. They will remind you of that time you failed. They will replay the chapter you've already closed. They will repeat stories in which you were at your weakest, not to reflect, not to reconcile, but to manipulate. And what's most dangerous is not that they remember, but that they retell it in a distorted version, always leaving out the part where you were growing, always ignoring the context, and especially omitting their role in it. They won't say how they provoked you, how they pushed you to your limit, how they gaslighted you until you exploded. They won't mention how your tears were met with silence, how your vulnerability was mocked, or how your mistakes were responses to prolonged emotional abuse. No, they'll just point to the moment you cracked and present it as proof that you're unstable. This tactic works on the unsuspecting. It works on people who don't know your full story. And it works when you try to defend yourself from a lie that was never intended to be corrected. Narcissists don't bring up the past for truth. They bring it up to trap. Because if they can get you to defend the old you, they can distract you from standing confidently as the new one. They want you back in the courtroom of shame, defending actions you've already repented for, explaining yourself to people who've already been infected with suspicion. They'll say things like, remember when you did that? And mama, this times ya tam tintan. Or don't forget where you came from. Not to humble you, but to haunt you. They want to link your current confidence with your past confusion, so others will doubt your transformation. They want to connect your success now with failure then, so your credibility feels tainted. This is why it's so crucial that you learn to discern the difference between reminders and reconstruction. A reminder brings awareness, accountability, and healing. A reconstruction builds a false version of your identity around outdated wounds, or to justify their narrative. When the narcissist resurrects your past, they are also hoping to reignite your emotional response. They want to see if the version of you they used to manipulate still exists. They want you to become defensive, panicked, ashamed, because when you react from that place, they regain a sense of control. Suddenly, you're not standing in power anymore. You're explaining yourself, apologizing again, or questioning your own growth. But here's the truth. Your past is not a threat to your future unless you give it that power. You're not who you were when you made those mistakes. You're not in the mindset you were in when you tolerated that chaos. And you're certainly not bound to the guilt they want you to carry. What they bring up as a weapon, you must see as a testimony. You have to own it before they can twist it. Yes, you went through that. Yes, you made some wrong choices. Yes, you were vulnerable. And yes, you grew through it. Freedom comes when you stop trying to prove you've changed and start living like you have. The people who truly know you will see the fruit. The ones who matter will look at your consistency, not a single moment pulled out of context. And those who believe the narcissist version of you were never rooting for your elevation anyway. Let them go. Let the misunderstanding reveal the loyalties. Let the lies run their course. Because the more you fight to be understood, the more energy you give to the very narrative you're trying to escape. You do not need to justify your healing to those who profit off your pain. You do not need to explain your evolution to those committed to misunderstanding it. And you absolutely do not need to revisit the old version of yourself just because someone refuses to accept that you've changed. The narcissist wants to chain your identity to who you used to be because it's the only version of you they knew how to manipulate. But you've outgrown that chapter. You've rewritten the script. You've evolved from being their puppet to walking in purpose. The past may still exist, but it no longer defines you. And anyone who insists on dragging it up as a way to diminish your present is not just unhealed, they're unworthy of your attention. Keep moving forward. Keep building. Let your life speak so loudly that the lies fall silent. And most importantly, remember, no one who resurrects your past with the intent to destroy your future deserves access to your present peace. They will remind you of everything they ever did for you. Every favor. Every time they picked up the phone. Every moment they gave you something that seemed like love. When you've finally risen above their control and found clarity, purpose, and strength, they come back with the most deceptive weapon of all, guilt. They don't come with apologies or healing. They come with emotional debt. They come to collect on invisible contracts you never signed. Because in the narcissist's mind, love is not a gift. It is a transaction. And now that they can't manipulate your feelings, they'll try to manipulate your memory. They'll say, after everything I did for you, this is how you repay me. They'll say, you wouldn't be where you are if it wasn't for me. They'll say, I sacrificed so much for you. And what they're really saying is, you're not allowed to outgrow me. You're not allowed to become independent. You're not allowed to leave the role I assigned to you. Because the narcissist doesn't just lose you, they lose their reflection in you. They lose the version of themselves they tried to project into your soul. They lose their control over the emotional currency they thought you owed them for life. And here's where guilt becomes a hook, not just a feeling. A hook that pulls at your empathy, that pulls at your kindness, that pulls at your loyalty. Because the narcissist knows what kind of heart you have. They were drawn to your compassion, your willingness to serve, your desire to give. They never admired it. They exploited it. And now they weaponize that very same trait to keep you tangled in the web of obligation. They know they can't stop your growth, but if they can slow it down with guilt, they will. They want you to feel bad for evolving, to feel selfish for protecting yourself, to feel cold for enforcing boundaries. They want you to believe that freedom makes you disloyal and peace makes you heartless. But the truth is, they are trying to shame you into submission. Guilt is powerful. It creates inner conflict. You question yourself. You rewind memories. You start wondering if you're the one who's changed for the worse. But you didn't change for the worse, you healed. You saw clearly. You woke up. And what they call changing is simply you returning to yourself. They don't miss you. They miss the version of you who didn't know better. The version of you who bent over backwards, who over-explained, who tolerated the bare minimum and praised it like a miracle. So, when the narcissist brings guilt to your door, you have to understand that it's not rooted in truth. It's rooted in fear. Their fear of being irrelevant. Their fear of losing the image they crafted through your dependence. Their fear of facing the consequences of their own behavior now that you're no longer covering for them with your silence and your sacrifices. And when they say you owe them, remind yourself, real love never keeps receipts. Real love doesn't do favors with expectations. Real love gives because it is whole, not because it seeks to make others feel small or bound. You don't owe them for the times they pretended to care. You don't owe them for the validation they gave only when it served their interests. You don't owe them for the pain they packaged as love. You don't owe them your peace, your power, or your progress. What they gave you was never love. It was leverage. And this is where your freedom sharpens. This is where your clarity deepens. You must learn the difference between being grateful for the lessons and being guilted into bondage. It's okay to acknowledge that someone played a role in your story, but that doesn't mean they get to narrate your future. It's okay to say, yes, you were there in that season, but this season belongs to me. You are allowed to outgrow people who once mattered. You are allowed to walk away from unhealthy ties, even if there were good moments. You are allowed to choose yourself without apology. The narcissist's use of guilt isn't just emotional. It's spiritual warfare. Because if they can make you feel unworthy of your own transformation, they can make you forfeit the very breakthrough you fought for. But guilt only works on the unhealed. Guilt only works when you don't know who you are. The moment you realize that love without respect is manipulation, the hook breaks. The moment you realize that their generosity had strings, you stop calling it love. The moment you realize that guilt is not a moral compass but a weapon in the wrong hands, you are free. And the freedom that comes when guilt loses its grip, that's a freedom they never planned for. That's the moment they realize that you're not just walking away, you're walking into the version of yourself that they tried to bury under shame. And that version of you is unstoppable. The most deceptive tactic a narcissist uses when they can no longer hold you, manipulate you, or emotionally tether you is to offer what looks like peace. But this peace is counterfeit. It's not restoration. It's not repentance. It's a performance. When all their manipulations have failed, when your silence has spoken louder than your words, when your growth has outpaced their control, they don't come to congratulate you, they come to reclaim you. And their tool of choice? A false sense of closure. They'll send the message, make the call, write the post, or show up in ways that seem like healing is finally being offered. They'll say things like, let's talk about what happened, or I've been thinking about my part too, or maybe we both made mistakes. It sounds like maturity. It looks like ownership. But look deeper. It's not an apology, it's a bait. They are not trying to make peace. They are trying to make a way back in. You see, closure is something you've already begun creating within yourself. But the narcissist will act like you need their final word in order to be free. They sense you've moved on. They know you found your footing. And so they reappear, not because they care, but because they can't stand watching you exist without them. They call it closure, but it's actually a Trojan horse. It's an emotional doorway dressed as a goodbye, but filled with sabotage designed to pull you back into the same dysfunction you fought to escape. They'll remind you of the good times. They'll say things like, not everything was bad, or I know I hurt you, but I still believe in what we had. It's selective memory. They don't mention the nights you cried yourself to sleep. They don't talk about the times you questioned your worth because of their gaslighting. They skip over the broken pieces you spent years picking up because they don't want reconciliation. They want re-entry. And once you let them in under the disguise of closure, they start rewriting the narrative. Suddenly, the pain you processed is now a misunderstanding. The abuse you survived is now mutual toxicity. The strength you found in silence is now coldness and ego. They're not seeking truth. They're seeking revision, not just of the past, but of your progress. Because closure to a healed person means finality. But to a narcissist, closure is just another word for control. If they can't dominate you emotionally, they'll try to appear humble. If they can't lure you with love, they'll try to bait you with accountability. But every word is strategic. Every sentence is a thread meant to unravel the boundary you built. They want access, not to fix what they broke, but to remind you that they still can. And if you fall for it, if you believe this false peace is real healing, you'll find yourself right back in a cycle. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week. But eventually, the compliments turn into criticisms again. The soft tone becomes passive aggression. The charm becomes chaos. And you'll wake up one day wondering how you got tangled again in a web you swore you'd never return to. That's why the final dirty game is so dangerous. Because it doesn't come in the form of rage or disrespect. It comes dressed in kindness, humility, and unfinished business. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll confuse bait for breakthrough. You don't need their closure to move on. Your healing doesn't require their signature. You don't need to reopen the door to prove you're over them. You don't need to meet for coffee, exchange long messages, or revisit memories in the name of maturity. The most mature thing you can do is protect your peace. The most powerful closure is the life you've built without them. The apology you never got cannot undo the lessons you've already learned. Your growth is not validated by their approval. Your future doesn't need their blessing. Your freedom is not contingent on their confession. You don't need their last word to live in your new beginning. So when they come with soft words and old stories, remember this. True closure comes when you close the door, not when they knock again with better words, but the same intentions. You have the right to say no to re-entry, even if it's disguised as healing. You have the right to guard your peace, even when they call it unforgiveness. You have the right to keep walking, even when they pretend to be waving a white flag. Because sometimes that white flag isn't surrender, it's a setup. And you've come too far, cried too long, and grown too deep to fall for the same game in a new costume. This is not bitterness, it's wisdom. This is not avoidance, it's protection. And this is not pride, it's discernment. So when the narcissist's last game comes cloaked in closure, don't answer it with curiosity. Answer it with clarity. You don't need to go backward to prove how far you've come. You've already won